Well, I can now speak to Fatou Jeng, who is the co-lead on gender at the UN's Youth Climate Movement, and Liane Schalatek, Associate Director of the Heinrich Boell Foundation in North America. Ladies, great to have you on the programme. Fatou, let's talk about climate change and its impact on gender inequality. Why does climate change affect women and girls more?
Thank you very much. I believe you've even sort of like in your intro mentioned that reports have indicated that 80% of the group that will be most impacted by the impacts of climate change are women and girls. And I live in a country where the impacts of climate change has definitely hit hard, which has affected not only the marginalized and poor communities, but most especially women and girls. So climate change over the years has not only led to desertification, drought, and other environmental conditions, but it has affected the agricultural or farming communities. And I'm from the Gambia, where 70% of our population basically depends on agriculture. And out of that populace, it is women that constitute the majority of the agricultural sector. And over the years, the impacts of climate change has not only led to the low yields, but also affected their main source of income and sustenance. And this has not only affected how well they're able to support their families, to go to school, etc., but has also been able to sort of like negatively impact their ability to basically more or less contribute effectively to society. And when climate change basically occurs or hits, girls are not only displaced, but they are stopped their education. And according to a recent report by the Malala Fund, 4 million girls this year in 2021 were affected, especially from the low and middle income countries, to continue their education. And this number is projected to increase to 12.5 million by 2025 if this is not solved immediately. And climate change has also led to a lot of young girls as child brides, because families cannot really sustain themselves anymore. And these children have to basically leave their schools and serve as child brides, which is really disheartening to say the least, because these are like groups that contribute very little to the climate change crisis that we're facing, amongst other challenges that they continue to face on a daily basis. So obviously, climate change hits women and girls the hardest.
Fatou, thank you. And Liane, Fatou's laid out how climate change impacts on women and girls very admirably there. And it is often the women in a community who are the ones who manage resources, who put food on the table. So what do we need to do? How can we prioritise policies which are responsive to the gender imbalance?
Well, I think first of all, it's important to recognize that the climate actions that we would like to see taken forward need to be 100% gender responsive. It's not enough to acknowledge that there is an impact on women, meaning being gender aware. It's also the willingness to actually act and have projects and programs designed in a way that takes on the particular challenge that women and girls are facing, the gender differentiated impact that we are seeing, and proposes to actually address them by focusing on the human rights of women and men, by actually focusing on gender equality as an equally important outcome of climate action as is emissions reduction or increasing the adaptation capacity of populations and ecosystems. And this needs to be actually introduced and replicated in funding. We need 100% gender responsive funding. That means that we cannot accept activities that in the name of climate, for example, undermine women's human rights, do not focus on the empowerment of women, and do not give women a voice actually in deciding which of the projects and programs that are happening are the ones that should be supported, and designing the measures that they would like to see put forward and that are in accordance with their needs. And actually, the example that you gave from India is a perfect example of the kind of financing that should be provided, but it's sadly very little provided for initiatives like that.
And Liane, do you think that the mindset is changing? I mean, at the moment, a lot of the solutions that we hear for climate change are geared towards industry or technology. Is it going to require a mindset to actually look at it from a gender perspective and invest more in female-led initiatives or initiatives which benefit women more?
I think you're right. It's absolutely crucial that we actually put a human rights-centered climate policy and climate action forward that, again, focuses on supporting human rights and focuses in particularly on how we make funding accessible for women's groups, community groups. If you look actually at the climate finance provided, a very minuscule part, I think it's only about 0.2% of climate finance provided that claims to be gender responsive or claims to take gender into account is actually going directly to the kind of initiatives and to the groups that you're showing, community groups. And we have the problem that the existing climate funds are not prioritizing funding for those kind of local actions, locally led actions, and locally determined actions. And this is what we need to be changing. We hear a lot, and we heard a lot today at COP26 on Gender Day about more finance being provided that takes women into account. But again, sadly, it's really, unless we make sure that women are direct recipients of climate finance and don't have a trickle-down approach to finance where it assumes that some other actors, be those development banks, be these UN agencies, be those commercial banks, know best what women want, then I think actually a lot of it is lip service.
And Fatou, how important is it that women are at the centre of the decision-making process? Because women often don't have a voice at the table, but a lot of these policies, a lot of these decisions are going to affect women and girls.
Thank you very much. I mean, today during the panel, the high-level panel discussion on Gender Day, which I spoke at, which had state ministers and Alok Sharma as well as Nancy Pelosi. So what I mentioned was very clear that she who feels it knows it. And these women are the ones on the ground that bear the brunt of climate change. It is women that are basically sort of like supporting our local systems. They are the ones that are in the front line. And our activities basically depend on the natural environment. And women have the local and indigenous knowledge. However, when it comes to decision-making processes or procedures, women are absolutely left out. Or even if they're included, they are not effectively included. So the fact that women have they have the adaptive capacities and the experience that they've been able to build over the past few years, sort of like just seeing how best they could basically adapt to the climate crisis, just shows how women play a very important role in decision-making processes. Because you don't expect these women to basically be at home or be in their communities and not really consulted or not really included in policies or projects or plans that basically concerns them. And this has been a problem for many of us over the years, because even at the UNFCCC level, during negotiations, we have seen over the past years that just 30% or just above 30% of women constitute our national delegations. And at the UNFCCC level, the speaking time that has been allocated is like about 30% of speaking time that is allocated for women and 70% for the male gender. So this is really disheartening. And I believe if we want to make the changes and if we're really very, very much serious about the change, it really needs to start not only at the local level, but also at where this decision that we're making about our NDCs and our national adaptation plan being gender inclusive. Because during the Gender Day event today, we've discussed all these things and highlighting how bringing forward women on the table, talk for themselves, to speak for themselves, to discuss the realities that they are facing and also provide the solutions that they want as far as climate adaptation is concerned, is as important as any other policies that we are going to be making towards not only climate adaptation, climate financing, and climate mitigation, but just climate justice in general. Because there is no climate justice, as I say, without gender equality or gender justice.
It's been great to speak with both of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here, Fatou Jeng and Liane Schalatek.